caught my wife cheating on me with a C-list actor, so I leaked the secret video she recorded. Now she's in jail for illegally filming him and he's suing her for ruining his career. Hey guys. So I'm going through a pretty shitty situation with my wife and I honestly can't figure out how to proceed, so I decided to come and ask for help, seeing as the regulars here have been trained by hundreds of stories somewhat similar to mine. So, my wife and I are both 36 years old and we've been married for exactly 8 years now. The whole situation sucks even more because our anniversary was 2 weeks ago. Anyway, the only background you really need to know is that we don't have any children and we've always been big fans of TV and movies. It might sound boring, but she doesn't really have any major hobbies beyond that, and I used to game but kind of fell out of love with it as I grew older. So, and this is important, there's a show that airs that I kind of like and that my wife loves. I don't want to say too much to identify it, but it's about to head to a 4th season and it's pretty popular. A particular actor in the show has always caught my wife's eye, and it can be a very annoying thing to experience because I've dealt with women who obsess over attractive celebrities. It can be tiring. You can be right there in the room and they'll start gushing about him, but you know if you did the same thing over some supermodel, she wouldn't speak to you for a week. Double standards. Anyway, this actor, let's call him Nolan so I don't need to give too much away, I'm trying not to find myself in any trouble if I might be susceptible to that. He's not popular. If you watch the show in question, you'll know his face, but most people have never seen him in anything else, so he's far from an A-list actor like Willem Dafoe or DiCaprio. It's hard to even claim he's B-list because his only well-known production is one TV show. Sure, his filmography page has several other movies and shows, but none of them were ever popular, and as something of a cinephile, I feel I'm in a good spot to make that claim. So yeah, I'm going to call him a C-lister, and that's not out of spite for what eventually goes down. So, let me take you all back to a conversation I've had with my wife, once in a full, and been reminded of several other times. She saw the guy on the TV and said a bunch of nonsense about how he's so handsome, his body is so hot, his voice is so sexy, and on and on. Then, out of nowhere, she says, I want him to be my hall pass. I was very confused by this, so I asked her to clarify what a hall pass is, because those only fit into a high school context in my mind, so it didn't make sense. Well, I bet that a lot of you know, but for those of you who don't, a hall pass is a stupid slang term for the one person that someone in a committed relationship can sleep with without it being considered as cheating. When she said this, I remember I audibly scoffed and told her how stupid it was that she'd even say something like that to me. It devolved into a whole argument that night, but before I slept, I realized that it was basically impossible that she'd ever get the chance to sleep with Nolan. It was mainly the disrespect of saying that you still desire outsiders sexually that got to me. If you feel that much lust towards someone, fine, but to admit it to your husband is crazy. Honestly, for the next couple of days, I was still reeling from the disrespect, and I even wanted to come up with some mega hottie to claim as my hall pass in front of her, but it just seemed childish. I decided to be a mature adult at that moment, and I spoke to her at length about how disrespected I felt with the hall pass comment and her thirsting over him, generally speaking. She apologized, though it didn't really seem like she understood why, and we left it at that. Over the next few months, maybe 6 or 7 months, she slipped up at least 5 times. Watching the show or seeing him on social media, and she'd make stupid comments pertaining to how drop-dead gorgeous Nolan was. The first 2 times I told her off, but after that, I gave up because I was tired of having uncomfortable conversations. However, it just made me wonder why not doing things that disrespect me was so hard for her. I've slipped up before on things she's been vocal about that she doesn't like, but I've never repeated the offense more than once. So, obviously, over the months, Nolan became more of a sore spot for me. I started to get pissed off every time I'd see his face in the show. Again though, he was just a face on a screen, so there was really nothing to worry about, right? Wrong. A convention was coming to the city next to us, and thanks to Nolan's Instagram page, my wife found out that he was going to be doing a meet and greet thing there. She didn't consult me on her going, but instead informed me that she was going too, and spent the 2 weeks leading up to it gushing nonstop. At that point, I really loved her, but the obsession was irritating me deeply. In fact, at a point, I got so frustrated that I blurted out, I really don't think it's a good idea for you to go if you're going to act obsessed like this. She just shot me a horrible look, but I decided to insist, and I said, I really don't think you should go. It's a city over and you didn't even consult me before making a decision. She said nothing, and just left the room, and honestly, I was happy to have gotten it out of my system that I let it go. I assumed that she had gotten the point. Well, until the day of the actual meet and greet, when I saw her wheeling her suitcase to the door. I asked her where she was going, and she told me to the other city, for the meet and greet. I think my mouth dropped open because I really didn't think she was going to go through with it. My ride's on the way. I'm going with Susie, a friend of hers who had twice been unfaithful to her husband, though the poor chap had no idea, and we're going to stay the night there in a hotel, so I don't need to come back at night. I'll be back tomorrow morning. To say I was enraged would be an understatement because this whole situation was really touching a sensitive area for me. But I decided I'd let her go and we'd deal with the aftermath of the whole thing after. In retrospect, that was a bad idea, but it's not like I was going to physically restrain her, so I guess I had no choice. I should have tried harder to stop her from going, but I guess if I did, I wouldn't know what I know now. So, the entire day went by with basically no communication from my wife beyond her sending a dry text letting me know when she got to the bus station and when she arrived in the other city, and then she basically went dark, until the next morning. I swear, I called at least 7 times at intervals but got nothing from her, which was incredibly stressful. We were not on good terms, but it doesn't change the fact that I thought she could have been in some kind of danger in a city she wasn't entirely familiar with. I ended up turning into an Instagram stalker. I kept checking the stories of the convention and Nolan, hoping to catch a glimpse of my wife, and among about 34 stories that were posted in total, I finally saw her in one. So I knew she got to the convention safely. It helped put me to rest a bit, but I was still pretty pissed. 7 missed calls, and she didn't have the decency to return one of them. It would just be added to the list of issues we had when she got back. Anyway, as promised, the next morning, I was woken up by the sound of the door to our house closing. My wife had gotten back from her trip, and as much as all I wanted to do in that moment was go back to sleep, there was a discussion that needed to be had. She came upstairs and found me sitting on the bed. I remember her pulling a really awkward smile as she went to push her suitcase into the corner. How was the meet and greet? Did you meet Nolan? I tried to say that with as little edge as possible, but I'm certain some came out. The meet and greet was nice. Yes, I did meet him, along with a few others from the show. It was nice to see these people in real life. I'm glad you got to experience that. Now, we need to. Before I was able to get out the rest of the sentence, she jumped in, tears welling in her eyes already. I know, baby. I'm so sorry. I should have asked if you were fine with me going instead of just choosing to go on my own. That wasn't fair at all. And I was annoyed with how things went earlier on, which was why I didn't pick your calls. But I'm so sorry. The calls at night, Susie and I went to a bar and I left my phone behind, so I didn't know you called. To be honest, I was disarmed by her apologizing because that was extremely unlike her. So while it was supposed to make me feel a lot better, something just felt off about it. But I decided that I'd do the thinking later. I asked her if I could see some of the pictures that she took, and she obliged happily. Now, it was at this point that I noticed a red flag. She angled the phone away from my face as she was looking for pictures. It was subtle, but I'm sure it was intentional. Only after opening a picture did she let me see the pictures she took, including some smiling beside Nolan, though she was the one holding her phone and swiping through them. If you have a Samsung Galaxy phone, you'll know that when you're in the gallery and scrolling through images, there's a little bar at the bottom of the screen that contains thumbnails of all the photos and videos in that folder. I saw something there. I was tiny, but it looked like a large swathe of skin tone, like some section of a naked body. I don't think she took that into account when she was showing me the photos, and again, I really couldn't say with any certainty what I was looking at. It came chronologically after the convention events though. That much was clear. I let her keep showing me the images until she was through, and I made the expected comments about Nolan being good looking, how I was glad she had met her favorite, and a lot of other jazz. But I knew what I needed to do as I was saying all of this, so once I was done and she was done, I encouraged her to go and take a shower to freshen up, and she agreed to do so with a big smile. Once I heard the water start running, I grabbed her phone right away and went to her gallery. There was one video as the very last piece of media in her gallery and I played it right away. It started off in a dimly lit room. It looked like a hotel room with soft, warm lights, and there was someone close to the camera. I could hear voices, but I couldn't turn up the volume because I didn't want her to hear. But the person near the camera seemed to be propping it up, and once they got it stable, they moved away from it. It was my wife. She was naked. She went to lie down on the bed, and it seemed she was waiting for something. Suddenly, the voices I could hear got a bit clearer as it seemed someone else emerged from the bathroom. The person was naked too, and I didn't even need to see the face clearly to see that it was Nolan. He moved towards my wife and climbed onto the bed. The video was 11 minutes long, and I had to stop there. I couldn't watch any more. I quickly sent the video over to my phone, cleared any evidence from hers, and I left the house. I didn't know where I was going, but my head was swirling and my heart was pounding. I think I walked for like 20 minutes before I decided it was time to watch the video I had taken off her phone. Watching it in full was horrible for me. Is there really anything worse than watching your wife get pounded by some actor that you've started to hate because she likes him so much? Why did she actually get the chance? Did she throw herself at him? Did he actually like her? What was going on? Honestly, it was giving me a headache and I felt so broken. There was nothing I could have done different, and I recognized that much. I didn't have much in my head as to what I was going to do next, but I know I have to divorce her. That much, a fool could tell you. See, being cheated on feels like shit, but it literally could have been anyone else in the world and it wouldn't have hurt this much. That's when I knew I would have to get back at her, and I'd have to make it hurt. So, I eventually headed back home, told her that I had to go for a walk because I was feeling nauseous, and then I did my best to continue to act normal. It's been a full week since I found this out and she's been exceptionally bubbly. Every time she smiles at her phone, I don't know if she's busy chatting with Nolan or something. I've become so paranoid and I'm tired of feeling like this. I need to make her hurt as much as I hurt right now, and that's where I need help because I'm blank on exactly what I can do. I'd love to hear what devious plans I can come up with that I can realistically deploy. Honestly, any suggestions are welcome. Update 1. Hey everyone. It's been a few weeks since my last post, but I've got quite a few updates for you on how things have been going down. I read through pretty much every comment on my original post, and I have to say thank you to everyone for really helping me out. My mind felt like it was in a bog, but I was able to find some clarity, so I'll let you know how things went down. The first thing that I did was to call up a divorce lawyer. I had a close friend who went through a messy divorce but managed to get a pretty good hand dealt to him in the end, so he referred me to his lawyer from back then. We started to get to work. The next thing I did was call up Susie, my wife's very close friend. I asked her to let us meet up, and she agreed to that, so we met at a bar. Now, Susie is loose, let me put it like that. Part of me was tempted to get with her to destroy my wife's friendship with her, but it wasn't the time, if it would ever be. But the whole point of meeting up with her was that if anyone knew anything about what had gone down between my wife and Nolan, that C-list actor she slept with, it would be Susie. Susie is a drinker, so as long as there are shots being paid for by someone else, it's easy to get her mouth running. We had some drinks and shots, she had a lot more than me, and engaged in a bit of small talk. Before we got to the point where she was wasted, I told her I was planning to surprise my wife with a designer bag, and I asked her what she would recommend. She yapped on and on about Chanel and Hermes, and I remember none of the details because that was just meant to be what she would remember. Now, once I noticed that she was really under the influence, I struck. So, Susie, my wife told me everything. I know that she slept with Nolan, that actor? Through her haze, her eyes widened for a second before she went back to normal. How did that happen? I'm just curious, and she refused to tell me. She took another drink, swaying in her seat, before letting me know how my wife had been excessively flirty with Nolan and had passed him a paper with her number on it. My wife is attractive, and as much as I hate her right now, I can admit that. Apparently, she had waited until much later and Nolan had actually sent her a text that was simply a hotel and a room number. More famous actors probably wouldn't have done something so stupid, but he's not a huge player in Hollywood. So, what about the tape? Did he know she made that? That was a suspicion of mine. Nolan might not have known my wife took a video, and if he didn't, that had a lot of potential. A lot. Again, Susie seemed a little shocked that I knew so much, probably surprised that my wife actually came clean. But yep, she confirmed to me that my wife had taken it secretly. She also let me know that she had watched it, along with some of her other girls, and that was infuriating. My wife was basically becoming a porn star for her friends. But I knew I was going to take out the trash very soon. I got all the info I needed from Susie, with the entire conversation recorded, and I ordered her a ride to take her home. Hopefully, Susie wouldn't remember all of this in the morning. I was trying my best not to tip my soon-to-be ex-wife off early. As time went on, the lawyer said things were a go. So, one night a few days later, when we were watching Nolan's stupid show, I told my wife that I wanted to get a divorce. She actually choked on the soda she was drinking, and spluttered for almost a minute. She was fine. She looked at me, nearly hysterical, asking whether I was joking over and over, but I told her that I wasn't. I thought I had prepared for this part, but it was extremely awkward. I really didn't want to reveal everything I knew yet. In the end, I couldn't take all her questioning and crying, so I left the house. She called me 21 times that night, but I didn't pick up a single call. The next morning, I arranged with the lawyer and had her serve the divorce papers at work. Needless to say, that was embarrassing for her. After I got the confirmation, I went back home, because she'd know the reason for the divorce. She came back home within 2 hours of getting served, and when I spotted her, it was clear she had been crying for a long time. She came up to me, got on her knees, and started crying all over my knees, trying to say something, but it only came out as a lot of loud mumbling. It was irritating. It went on for like 20 minutes, and every time I would push her away, she'd start wailing even louder. When I reached my limit, I very sternly asked her to go upstairs to pack her things. She kept crying and crying, and at that point, I managed to hear her saying how sorry she was, how it was a mistake, and on and on. When I heard the mistake part, I actually laughed and shoved her off my knee. She looked at me sadly from the carpet and I stood up and left the room. In a few hours, she was packed and out of the house. Apparently, she's gone to go and stay with Susie, who, even if she remembers anything about that night, certainly won't volunteer that she fed me with info. Anyway, what's left for me is for the divorce to be finalized, because I still have one major trick up my sleeve, but I need things to be officially over before then. Hopefully, I won't lose interest in revenge, but we'll see, friends. Update 2, it feels like it has been ages, but it has been just under a year. However, I'm finally back with what should be the final update, and boy, is it good. So, we've finalized the divorce, and it's not a process I'd want to go through again. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of stalemating, and just a lot of stress, but it is finally over. I'm going to have to pay alimony, but thankfully, Her infidelity, which she did a poor job of denying, and which I was able to make easy work proving, made the payments a lot less heavy. Plus, the payment term won't be for very long. In the process, I exposed Susie and everything she had let me in on, which was certainly salt to the wound for my wife. A lot of money was split, but I kept the house after an annoyingly long battle on that, and that was good enough for me. Now, once things were clear, this is where I was able to have fun. I had held onto that video since I snatched it off her phone. I mean, Nolan is C-list, but he's still famous and there's nothing Hollywood loves more than gossip. So who did I hit up first? TMZ. Yep. I let them know what I had for them, and I did a very good job of anonymizing even though I don't think they snitch on sources. I'm not used to the tabloid lifestyle, so I was trying to be as careful as possible. Once I proved I had what I claimed I had, I got to talking with a journalist from the tabloid and even made a bit of change off it. Not much, but not too little. I must have refreshed TMZ 100 times after that, waiting for when they'd go live with the story. It wasn't the same day, but it eventually showed up on their website the next day. My favorite touch in the article? They used the name I provided. After all, everyone wanted to know who the mystery woman who got the chance to sleep with Nolan was, and they made it clear that Nolan was unaware of the recording. Using the same throwaway email account I used for my correspondence with TMZ, I sent a link to the article to my ex-wife's email address. At this point, all I could do was wait, especially because I wouldn't directly see what was going on in her life and how she would respond to the article. That's what I thought at least, until she knocked on the door to the house that used to be for both of us, 2 days later. She seemed crazy, and she kept saying, "I know it was you, admit it was you." I kept playing dumb, but I was doing it in an intentionally over-the-top way, because I wanted her to know it wasn't just karma, some universal force punishing her. Nah, she needed to know it was me, and I could almost see the point where she realized I was playing coy. It's like she snapped right then, and she lunged for my throat, clawing and striking. I fell over with the force which she jumped at me with, but it wasn't hard for me to get her off me. Thankfully, a neighbor had seen the whole thing. All her noise had attracted his attention, and the police were there in some minutes after the incident. Yes, I pressed charges, which was very satisfying. Most of her family live in other states and she and Susie had fallen out, so I hoped it took her some time to get someone to post bail for her. Anyway, the assault charge was just a cherry on top for me. I didn't plan for that to happen. The real big thing was her going to court for unlawful surveillance. She recorded Nolan without his consent, and even though she wasn't responsible for the leak, it only existed because she made it illegally. The case went on for quite some time, especially because Nolan wanted punitive damages for the harm the leak caused to his career. Apparently, he lost a job in some movie series aimed at younger audiences because of that. That made me feel good. Unsurprisingly, Nolan's lawyers were a lot higher end than what my wife could afford. She took a bunch of my money, but I was glad to see her wasting it on the consequences of her actions. It genuinely made me very happy every time I heard an update on the case, whether it went her way or not. A certain headline called her a groupie. That was fun. To cut a long story very short, she had to spend 2 months in jail and pay a $1,000 fine. As far as I'm concerned, she got off fairly easy, but I'm allowed to be vindictive, aren't I? Well, fellas. Now that things have settled down, she's in jail right now, which is fun. I feel so much better and I feel very satisfied. All I can say is that if you get a sign that someone is cheating on you, run and never look back. Plus, if you can get revenge in the process, never let the chance go. That's it from me, take care, y'all.